So no one else on YouTube has addressed this issue. This is the Roland RS 5, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up and I'm going to replace this key. So the guys at Centaur sent this key. This is the new key that's going to replace the key all the way at the top here. The first thing I've done is to remove all of the screws on the back panel. That includes the 5 recessed screw holes, 2 on the far side, and there are 3 on this side, as well as the 15 screws that are located in these recessed ridges here, as well as the back part here. As you can see, the screws have been removed using a Phillips screwdriver. It wasn't hard to get out, and I've separated them. This keyboard only came with 3. The previous user must have lost the other 2, but all 15 of the other screws were there. I have them separated. All the smaller screws are identical, so I just grouped them together. Those are the screws from here as well as here. The next step, which is actually relatively easy, is simply to remove the back panel. It just comes right off. There are no ribbon cables or anything attached to it, as you can see. So I'm just going to place that to the side, and we have a look at the inside of the keyboard here. The next step is to remove this silver protective aluminum. It's held together with an adhesive strip under here, which I've already taken the liberty of unadhesing. And then there are 2 screws located here and here, which hold it on, and it appears that there's also an adhesive strip on the back, but I don't believe we're going to need to remove that. Having removed the 2 screws, we can now lift this up and expose the board underneath. The key bed assembly is mounted with screws here, here, here. Looks like there's actually not one in there, which is okay. Here, here, and finally here. Now, as I go to lift this up, I can see that there's a little bit of give. So I'm not going to worry too much about the screw that was here. What I'm going to do is remove this screw, this one doesn't have one, so we're going to skip that, here, and here. This end doesn't give, but I believe this is the screw that holds it together. So I'm going to remove that. Now, having removed those screws, I actually placed them on the floor in the order that they appear on the keyboard, correlating to the screws that I removed here, 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 and here. This is going to give the key bed some leeway to move, as you can see. In fact, it would probably just come right out, but first we're going to remove these ribbon cables. They can be detached either from the key bed or from the motherboard. Depending on what you're comfortable with, you can remove either end. I've removed the black cloth-like rubber strip that was located here, which held the ribbon cables firmly to the board. For this tutorial, I'm not going to remove either of these ribbons because it looks like it's difficult to get them back in. However, these appear to not have any type of clip connector going to them, so what I'm going to do is just give it a light pull and it'll come right out. With that being removed, the only other thing that connects the key bed to the frame are these ground wires located on this end and on this end, which the screws were removed to remove the key bed, so therefore they're just hanging there. I'll carefully move this controller cable, which goes to the pitch bend and modulation wheel, out of the way between the board and this mounting bracket, which should release the key bed to come off of the frame. As you can see, by simply pulling it in a forward direction, the key bed comes detached from the frame. I advise you to take precautions when doing this, is not to scratch this control board located at the top, and avoid letting this mounting bracket damage this cable. You can remove this cable by pulling it out, but by simply lifting up on the board, this mounting bracket goes under the wire without any issue. And as you can see, the key bed has been removed from the unit, and we're ready to start the next part of the process. So looking at the way that this is set up, it would appear that this U shape here actually puts tension on the part that holds the keys together. So as I push this apart, it looks like this key is actually just going to pop right off. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and separate this by flexing this plastic piece in an outward motion, which should allow the key to safely come off. I'm trying to do it with one hand so that I can also hold the camera. What I'm going to do is exactly what I just showed you, but I'm going to use both hands. So in the next clip, that key will be removed. So the key came out with minimal effort. All I did was press this direction and that direction simultaneously, and it popped right off. One thing I did discover is that this spring, which forces the key into an upright position after being released, is located on a small black pin here. As I removed the key, the spring sprung and ended up somewhere over there. So I was able to locate it. It's right here. That key has a recessed hole here, and that's where the spring goes. It sits neatly down in there. I would recommend actually putting it on the prong before installing the new key, which is what we're going to do right now. Just a brief FYI about what comes in the package. It's just the key itself, which is identical to the one removed. Obviously this one has a broken off key part, but it does not come with the spring. It only comes with the key, so do not lose that spring. That is going to be important. So to install the new key, you'll see that it has this hook section at the bottom. That's what's going to go in first, as that's how the old key came out. So it's going to go in here. It'll look a little bit low, like that. Alright. The spring should line up perfectly without any issues. I've just dropped it in there. It's not connected yet. And I'm going to gently push down here until I hear click. Key has been replaced. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow a reverse procedure. Okay, there we go. I'm going to follow a reverse procedure to put this back together. Once again, a reminder of this cable that goes to the pitch and modulation controller. Be mindful of that as you put this back where it came from. Alright, with the key bed now positioned in such a way where you can see the screw holes down between where the key bed is and the board, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this a little bit so you can see what I mean. This is the key bed here. So just check and make sure that it's lined up properly. And as you can see, there we go. That's where the screws are going to go. The very first step is going to be to reattach these ribbon cables. They don't move, they're pretty stiff, so you're not going to get confused as to which one goes where. So you'll just want to grab a hold of it, line it up neatly, and slide it down in there. Alright, and with the ribbon cables properly fastened, I'm going to take the black strip that I mentioned earlier, and that just goes across here and across here, which will hold the ribbon cables to the board on the back of the keybed. The most important part is to make sure that it is securely fastened to the board as well as to the ribbons. However, the ribbons are going to have a little bit of movement to them. We don't expect them to adhere to the board because, as you can see, it's elevated a little bit here to here. And also, as the cover goes on the keyboard, we'll find out whether or not these are going to be too high, whether we need to bend them over a little bit. It's going to be hit or miss. But as for the lower part of the ribbon, it's allowed to hang over a bit here. That's fine. So it would appear that the adhesive that I removed here earlier is no longer adhesing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some electrical tape and I'm going to place a strip of it here, here, and here to hold it down. Just make sure that you don't cover up these screw holes because they are what's going to hold the back onto the chassis. So with my electrical tape fix in place, the next step that I'm going to do is to use the screws that I had laid out in order of how they came off. I'm going to replace the screws here, 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 and here. And that will secure the keybed to the chassis. One important thing that I would like to point out is make sure that the ground wire, the green ground wire that's located on this side of the keyboard as well as on this side of the keyboard is properly secured, because that is going to the keyboard won't function without it. So make sure that your screw does go through the hole here, that when you secure it, the cable is secured with the screw. With the keybed now secured to the chassis, the entire unit is ready to have the cover put back on. So what we're going to do is I'm going to begin putting the 15 small screws as well as the 5 larger screws back into the cover. So I'm just going to take the cover and set it right on top of the keyboard until it's in place, and we're going to put those screws back in. Alright, so having replaced all the screws, there are no leftover screws, there are no leftover parts or extra screws, as some of you DIY guys know can happen. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the keyboard on a stand and we're going to plug it in and dry it. Alright, so we have the keyboard plugged in, turned on, and here's the key that we replaced. So to make sure that the keybed is functioning, I'm going to turn the volume up a little bit and start hitting keys. Okay, there's the key that we replaced right here, here. And the adjacent keys do work. And then I'm just going to go through all of them, because if for some reason one doesn't work, I'd like to fix it while I still have the tools out. Okay, and I'm just going to hit some buttons here. So the screen's working, and looks like our controllers are all working, all of our buttons and lights. So There we have it, a fully functional Roland RS5 with a replaced key. Thanks for watching, guys. I certainly hope this helps.